Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. My voice is cleared up finally, and we're going to go back and we're going to work on one of those reels that I found at the garage sale and recently posted on video. Now this reel is already spoken for. I talked to a fellow named Chuck out in Washington, and this reel is going to go to his grandson. So I figured I'd tune it up a little bit before we send it off and show you how this one's made. So it's a Zebco. Like I mentioned on that video, I don't see too many Zebcos in because of the price point, and that price point often makes it a disposable reel, but it doesn't mean it's a bad reel, and it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be serviced. So this is a 2-ball bearing reel. It's very smooth in operation. It's the Zebco Genesis, and those of you that watched my history of fishing reel companies on Zebco know that Zebco was formed in 1947 by R.D. Hull. And you know that they're famous for their closed-faced fishing reels, and that they started making the spinning reel when they acquired Langley, which is another post-war company that was making fishing reels that specialized in spinning reels. They acquired them in 1957, and after that Zebco started introducing some fishing reels. Now this one is much later than any of that history, but it's still a nice reel. My guess is this is probably 10 years old or so. And we're going to take it apart. We'll show you how it's made. We're going to service it up, and we're going to get it out there so Chuck's grandson can go fishing. So we're going to start by taking off the external parts. You saw me take off the handle there. That has a through shaft handle. That means that it's held in by a screw cap on the other side. And good practice is to put that screw cap right back into the handle so you know where to find it. Another practice that I use is that I put all of the parts that I take off of a reel into a parts tray. In this case, it's just the bottom of a milk jug, and a couple of the big body parts I'll lay off to the side. So I took the spool off. Next, I'm going to take this click assembly and the shim washer off. They usually can just pull right off like they did there. And in this case, there's a tie down, a little cap here that's going to hold that nut from spinning off and loosening the rotor. So we'll take that off as well while we're at it. And this is more just to show you how all of this reel comes together than you absolutely need to do this for a service, but we're going to do it anyway. This nut comes in a counterclockwise traditional threading for taking it off. And I'm going to put that in my parts tray, the little cap and the nut. Now, while we're at this, I wear a protective glove on my hand here to keep greases and dirt and grime and the like off. I recommend that you do the same. If you do a lot of this stuff like I do, you just don't like getting your hands all mucked up with that stuff over time. The other thing, the parts tray, this, and the third piece that I always mention is take pictures along the way. That's kind of hard to find. Schematics and the like for Zebcos, there's a lot of different ones out there. You know, they seem to be in job lots. There's no parts available. If you go on their website, it says they don't support aftermarket parts. They only support them during the warranty period with a replacement. Probably another reason why these things don't get repaired much, because there's no repair parts available. So if you have one that's in good condition, like this one is, just simply oiling and greasing, maintaining it. But you don't need to go any further than that. So here's your rotor assembly. We noticed that the bail was tripping before when I tried to just test it out here. I'm going to put a little oil in each side of the sleeve of that. And this is not a bearing here, but you could put a little bit of oil on the line roller nonetheless. Work it in by a couple of manual tweaks and just set that off to the side as well. Put that right under the cap there. Now, if the bearing was bad, you could go in and repack this. You would take the 3 pieces of this off, and you would pull it out and repack the grease. In this case, that bearing's working fine. I'm just going to place oil in there. I'm going to work it around. That's all we need to do there. So let's go down below then and just inspect and tune up the bottom of this and show you what's in there. You start by pulling the screw on the bump cap. Now, if you didn't want to take that rotor off, if you didn't want to work on the bearing up top there, I guess that's acceptable. But you know, it only takes a minute or two, so why not do the job completely? Into the parts tray with that, we have 3 side body screw. So if you didn't take that bump cap off, you would miss this one, and you wouldn't be able to get the side plate off. So that's why you want to get in there and get that done. And when I take side plate screws off, I leave them on my table here so that I know that if there's a small one in there or a long one, where it goes. If they're all the same size, you don't worry about it. But from experience, I've put them all in my tray and then realized that I had one that was long and wondered what in the world I had to do with that one. And that'll be the case here, actually. This one looks like it's longer than the other. It is. So now we're noting that the small one belongs below here. And let's see what we have up top here for the third one. So Zebco is a solid product. Zebco has made its money and its reputation on providing value point combination rods and reels. They were the first to introduce the combination, and to this day they still sell them, mostly packaged rod and reel for the entry-level angler, and there's a good value to be had at that price point. Okay, we have two long, one short for the side plate screws. Right into that parts tray again. And we should be able to just lift this off now, which we are. Pretty clear plastic bushing that kind of, again, is indicative of the price points for these reels. You're not going to find a bearing there. You typically will find that as a bushing. The crosswind block comes next. You want to pull that out. That little screw in the crosswind block holds the axle shaft, which goes up top. And these I'm just putting right on my desk here because I'm just going to do a quick lubrication of these and put them right back in, so I'm not going to bother with the parts tray. When you remove the axle shaft, you can then remove the main gear. We're going to check just to make sure all of the teeth and everything on that main gear are good. You look at it from a side view and you look at it from a top view. You also want to check the one behind it, the one that drives the crosswind gear. Make sure all of that is okay too. They are. I'm going to grab a little needle nose pliers now and pull that crosswind block off. And then I'm going to pull the crosswind gear off as well. And we're just going to do a little bit of cleaning behind it then. There's some dried grease in the back end of this thing, so let's take care of that. I'm using a cotton swab to do that. A little bit on the back end of the gear itself, so I'm just going to wipe that off using a paper towel. And then we can just put a little bit of grease. I'm going to use a Penn Precision Reel Grease. I'm impartial to what kinds of, which manufacturer of fishing reel grease you use, but I am very much set that you should use fishing reel grease. Just talked to a fellow yesterday who's using bike grease on his fishing poles or fishing reels, and I asked him, would you use fishing reel grease on your bike? And he said, of course not. So kind of, he got the message, right? There's different compounds, different formulas, different properties within the greases. Some are good, some are not, in terms of water resistance, heat resistance, and so on. If it's been designed for a fishing reel, you're much better off using that than taking chances with the other stuff. Okay, I'm going to set that point to the bottom there when we go to reinstall. Just wanted to show you, if you didn't take the rotor off, you could get to the bearing by coming underneath here in the case. We'll just put a little bit more up there and turn it that way. That's another way to oil the pieces. All right, I'm going to take that crosswind block. We're going to make sure it's clean. In this case, it's too clean. We want to put a little bit of grease in there. I'm going to put that grease back, the crosswind block back on that stud. That stud rides in the cavity on the crosswind gear. Over here then, this is another one that's just a case of dried out. So let's go ahead and grab the grease. A little bit onto the back side of the gear that drives the crosswind block, and then up to the main gear side. And you don't have to put it on every tooth. It will work its way in as you're cranking away there. We're going to set that in. Going to grab the bushing and put that back on. And then we're going to clearing the axle off. Just going to put a very light coat of oil onto the grease onto that the axle. The problem with that is if you put too much in, it's just going to get stuck. So we've done that part of it. We want to put the rotor on now. We want to put our rotor nut on. Again, typical straight up construction here. And I just need to check my camera. I just heard a noise in that. Yep, we're going fine. And then we want to tighten that down. This is a 12mm nut if you're playing along with us. Give it a spin to make sure it spins nicely, which of course it does. Find that little clip and the screw that ties that down. And we can go put that set in. And Zebco gives you multiple points along the way here to find a flat spot for that, that tie down to work. Just going to grab a screwdriver with this here, get that started, and that's how it goes. You find the flat side that goes to the flat side of the nut and tighten that down. And then we're ready to put the axle in. The axle has a flat side to it. That's what's going to go into the cross block. So that cross wind block you have to line up and then line the hole up inside of that. And then we come back with the screw. Oops. Me and small parts, we just don't get along. But I guess that comes with age. Alright, this is a Phillips head. Now if you got confused along the way there, you could have gone back to pictures and said, geez, I got 5 screws in my bucket, which one belongs where? And gone back to your picture and seen that the one with the Phillips head drive belongs here, which we just did. Okay, next up then is the side plate goes on. And we remember, because we took good notes when we took this apart, that the 2 long screws belong in the wider part of the body here. And that the shorter one belongs in the hole below. And again, these are Phillips heads. Now folks ask me, those of you that are regular viewers kind of get tired of hearing it, can I use a mechanical screwdriver to put these in? And my recommendation is no. One, I like working with my hands, so that's maybe a bias on my part, but the other part is a case like this is probably a plastic case. I don't even think it's a graphite case, so my guess is it's plastic. And if you over torque this, you're either going to warp the case or you're going to break the case. So if you need to use it, if you don't have that flexibility in your hands, the best thing to do then is to leave it short. You can get it started and you can drive it 3/4 of the way, but leave it short. Don't drive it all the way home. Okay, now the bump guard. Overall, this is a nice reel. This is something that I think will last a long time. When I talked to Chuck, he mentioned that he's got a grandson that wants to take up fishing. He wants to take him to the Snake River out there in Washington, and he wants to give him a reel that can last him. So this is ideal for him. If you were going to go by yourself and you were going to go and use this thing every day, I think it probably would stand the test. But sometimes, you know, depending on the heavy usage and the like, you might want to go to a mid-range kind of a model. But for a beginner who's trying to figure out if they like the sport and going to take several trips, this is perfect, and it's at a great price point. Okay, put that screw back in and give it a spin just to make sure that we've got everything right internally. Next up then is the click ratchet and that little shim washer. So these shim washers are used to control the way that the line feeds on the spool. If you find that your line is gathering up top heavy and light on the bottom, then you need to put another shim washer in. If you find out it's gathering too much on the bottom and not enough on the top, then you would reverse the shim washer. You take one out to control that. Okay, that's on. I guess we should show you one more thing while we're at it, and that one more thing would be the drag setup on this. I'm assuming that these drags are probably the Teflon drags and no service is needed. That's kind of the way Zebco would design this, because it's not typically a reel that's going to be seeing much service. But let's pull that drag stack out. Okay, so the drag stack is clean. If you had a problem with that inside the center there, you could wipe it down. I'll just do that as part of an illustration. And yes, these are hard washers, so these hard washers do not get anything. You'll see that there's two different types of metals. There's a keyed and there's an eared one. The eared one always goes in the middle. Same amount of fabric washers. So you got a hard washer, followed by a keyed washer, second hard washer, eared washer, last of the hard washers, last of the keyed washers, and then we have the the clip, and there's a groove that clip rides in, and you need to make sure that the groove gets anchored, or that the clip gets anchored in the groove. That's only to hold the washers in. There's no purpose to it other than that, and in this case we're not quite in that groove there, so I'm going to just pull that up. There we go. And you can just do a visual on that to see that it's in the grooves properly. Okay, that's it. We just have to kind of shake it around there a little bit to get it on. Here, go ahead and put the drag on, put the handle on, give it a final spin, and send it off. So that's the Zebco Genesis. This is a 40 size reel. It's a 30 size reel, I'm sorry. The Genesis model number is GEN30, and that's got a continuous anti-reverse. It's got a ball bearing up top on the main stack that makes the two bearings they're referring to there. And overall, this is a nice performing reel at a good price point. Now again, this probably came with a combination setup, which is typical of Zebco, but overall it can be used on any rod and reel. And this one's going to go fishing, and hopefully his grandson catches a lot of fish with it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I ask you to subscribe. That's what keeps my channel going. I ask you to comment if you have any questions regarding this or any type of reel you might be working on. It doesn't have to be germane to this topic. And if you have a reel that needs to be repaired and you're a little bit intimidated, well, I work on those as well. And if you send me an email, I can send you details on my repair services. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.